The Maguuma Jungle is vast, dense and impenetrable. There are areas that no outsider will ever see, and creatures no scholar will ever classify. After the defeat of the jungle dragon Mordramoth, vast quantities of magic were released into the surrounding jungle. The impact this magic had as it seeped into the flora and fauna was dramatic. Out of the chaos emerged the sloths, hulking beasts with glowing vermilion eyes mutated by the magic and the New World Order now the dragon was dead. Not much is known about the sloths. Most who try to study them only get so far before fleeing for their lives. Some of the elite soldiers of packed forces still venture deep into the northern Maguuma Jungle and have come face to face with a gigantic beast. Nicknamed Slothasor, this creature offered a rare opportunity to understand aspects of sloth life. They are assumed to be mammals, warm-blooded, with a coat of reddish-brown fur. Their faces are marked with white, and their mouths are lined with giant fangs. Their sinister glowing eyes are presumed to be a side effect of magic absorption. What other aspects of sloth physiology have been changed by this phenomenon are as yet unknown. Their front limbs are heavily muscled, and if provoked, the sloth will pound the ground with its fists and crush its attacker. They may also breathe fire, sending out a gout of flame several times the length of their body in an attempt to defend themselves. Not surprisingly, the giant sloth spend most of their time asleep. Those who have fought Slothasor comment on its tendency to lapse into fits of narcolepsy, burying its head in its paws and descending into unconsciousness. Because of their bulk, sleeping like this conserves energy. They are easily the fiercest creatures in this part of the jungle, and they need not worry about being alert and awake for predators. Slothasor lives in a cave alongside another creature. These are Slublings, a moniker chosen because of the way these animals resemble both a sloth and a grub. When tales of these Slublings reached central Tyria, many scholars suggested these slubs were indeed insect larvae that had developed a special form of camouflage called mimicry. By taking on the visage of the much more terrifying sloth, they could dissuade predators from attacking them. However, new evidence has arisen that suggests the relationship between the sloth and the slub is far more complex. Far from the jungle, in the sun-baked desolate landscape of Ember Bay, are human inhabitants. These castaways, eking out a living between the shattered hulls of their ships, harbour one last hope for the success of their circus. They have captured a sloth. Their tales as they recount the capture reveal that Slublings are in fact juvenile sloths. They brought their Slubling to the island aboard their boat, and she grew from her slub size to the hulking beast she is today. Slubling's presence in Slothasor's cave, therefore, makes sense. They appear to cluster around their parents and fight anything that gets too close. Their flame breath echoes that of the sloth, and they spew toxic projectiles that severely injure an adversary. Though it is certain a Slubling will grow into a sloth, other aspects of the sloth life cycle remain shrouded in mystery. The Ember Bay Sloth Queen lives in isolation. She has known no other habitat for her entire adult life. How then could she be able to produce Slublings? One theory is that the adult sloth can reproduce asexually. Without the need for a mate, isolated sloths can birth Slublings that are genetic clones of themselves. This raises the question of just how rare giant sloths are in Tyria. Being as hyper-aggressive as they appear, perhaps social living in groups is just impossible, and far too unsafe for these creatures as they compete for space and food. Instead, they have adapted to the solitary life, safe in lonely colonies of sloth and Slublings. Or perhaps the expulsion of magic from the death of an elder dragon has mutated their temperament as much as their bodies, and once gentle giants are now fierce and terrifying. The sloths we see may be the last of their kind, the most resilient, capable of living through mutation. One thing is certain, the behaviour of a sloth in captivity differs wildly from that of the sloth in the jungle. The Ember Bay Sloth Queen is confined to a dull, constrictive pen on the side of a volcano. Her day revolves around sleeping and feeding off whatever meagre rations her captives deem fit to give her. Contrast this to the lush environment in which Slothasor lives. It appears the preferred food of slubs, and perhaps Slothasor, is mushrooms. The cave in which they have chosen to live is filled with these glowing, toxin-rich fungi. Slubs gobble up the nausea-inducing shrooms with gusto, and as they replenish swiftly, the creatures have a near-endless supply of food. In contrast, on these sandy shores of Ember Bay, no such mushroom exists. Instead, the humans have discovered a spiny exotic fruit that the Sloth Queen is able to stomach. The food supply is sparse, however, and a sloth of her size needs much more than they are able to give. In her discomfort and hunger, the sloth displays an unsettling survival behaviour. She will consume her own slublings in a desperate attempt to sustain her health. Her human captives seem frightened of her aggression and enlist the help of others each feeding time to pacify her. Her obvious distress leads one to wonder if sloths such as this are fit to live in captivity for any length of time. But any attempt to suggest returning the queen to the jungle are met with disdain by the circus employees. No matter whether in captivity or living amongst the vegetation of the jungle, giant sloths are magnificent and capture the imagination of scholars and adventurers alike. Perhaps hidden somewhere are more of their fantastic kind, untouched by unruly magic and unconstrained by interference from elsewhere. And perhaps one day we can study them.